I've had a number of friends reach out to me in confidence over the last couple of weeks and confide into me that they are feeling increased levels of anxiety and asking me what I would do. So today, with the situation we're dealing with in the world and the uncertainty and the increased levels of anxiety and stress that come about from that, I'd like to talk with you about how I manage my mental landscape. And perhaps what I say will give you a distinction or two that may help you in dealing with the current situation. A number of years ago, a company hired me to come in and deliver a day-long seminar. And I had just stood up in front of the group and began my introduction. And way in the back of the room, this gentleman stands up and he basically yells across this audience, "What are your credentials? Why should I listen to you?" Now, those of you who know me know that I love to have a great laugh, and I do not know why I did not laugh. But a hush kind of descended upon the audience, and of course everybody's drilling me down and looking at me like, well, what are you going to say to this guy? I paused, and I looked beyond the delivery of his question at the substance. And actually, the substance of his question was very fair. I'm going to spend a day of my life with you. What can I plan on taking away in return for that? What's my ROI going to be? Do you really know what you're talking about? Well, I subsequently discovered that this group had endured a very poorly delivered seminar by another presenter. So, what are my credentials? What qualifies me to talk about managing your mental landscape? I am not a mental health professional. I'm not a therapist. So credentials, if I have any, are experiential in nature. So let me explain. When I was a young man, I developed a lot of fears about this world and the things in it. I also doubted my ability to successfully navigate this world and to live a happy and successful life. This actually led to a severe depression and anxiety. And when I finally went to visit the doctor, he told me that I was suffering from two maladies, clinical depression and OCD. And then this doctor, if you can believe it, went on in his narrative to explain to me that a number of people who have what I have end up in asylums. Talk about bad bedside manner. Anyway, long story short, I left his office with a referral to a mental health professional and a prescription. I'm sad to tell you that the medication didn't work at all, and I ended up going to two different therapists, and I was not able to make a connection with either one of those people. As a result, I became very, very discouraged. Now, at this point, I need to take a break here, and I need to point out the fact that my experience, with medication and therapy was atypical, even years ago. There are numerous medications nowadays that can successfully treat depression and anxiety disorders, and obviously the world's full of good therapists. Back to my story. One night when I was feeling particularly low, I started thinking to myself, I certainly can't be the first person to have ever dealt with these kinds of mental health issues before. And that being the case, maybe somewhere along the way, somebody who has dealt with this has learned how to successfully deal with it. Or perhaps some therapist who has worked with people who have what I have has discovered how to successfully treat these people. In fact, maybe they've written about it. I had always been an active learner, an avid reader, and so I literally threw myself into researching mental health. I focused on psychology, cognition, positive thinking. And while I did it, I kept this journal here. I kept copious notes about every book that I read, hoping that I would find some new distinctions, some tools that I might be able to use in addressing my own issues. And the interesting thing that happened, the more I researched, the more I found that all of these books seemed to talk about some common themes or topics, if you will. And I started delving deeper into these. And so what I'd like to do today is I would like to share with you two major distinctions that I discovered in my research that I actually implemented to transform my life, my thinking, if you will. Distinction number one. I discovered how dangerous chronic stress can be. I learned that chronic stress, creates chemical changes in the brain that actually can lead to clinical depression and anxiety disorders such as OCD and even PTSD. I also discovered that all people have a breaking point, a point where one more straw breaks the camel's back, so to speak. And the scary thing about this particular point is that most people are pretty sure that they know what their threshold is, how much I can take. Unfortunately, that's not true. We do not know what our breaking point is. I knew that I'd been very, very stressed out for a long, long time, and it became crystal clear to me that I had to do something to attack this challenge, my mental thinking challenge at its core. So job one for me became, how can I reduce the levels of chronic stress that I am currently experiencing? Distinction number two, I learned that human beings can change in one of three ways. We can change how we think, we can change how we feel, and we can change how we act. And I discovered an incredible truth. When we make a change in one of those three areas, those changes affect the other two areas as well. For example, when we think a thought, feelings follow. Those thoughts and feelings can influence our subsequent behavior. Feelings can result from witnessing an act of kindness. Those feelings produce thoughts and potentially new behaviors. And finally, when we perform an action, it can lead to new thoughts and new feelings. Well, I discovered for me, actions were the easiest thing to change. Thoughts were next. Feelings were the hardest. So I decided in order to heal, I would concentrate on changing my behavior. Whenever I started feeling depressed or down, I would do something, literally anything. I threw myself into my hobbies and my interests with a renewed passion. I became very, very active. And in fact, at this time, I wrote a distinction in this journal again of mine. I wrote this: action is the antidote for despair. Because what I discovered very quickly was that the more action I took, the more positive and productive my thinking became. And I started to feel better, much, much better. And slowly but surely, I started to heal. And eventually, my life was completely transformed by this new methodology that I had employed. Now, all societies have taboos. And unfortunately, one of the taboos in our modern society is talking about mental health issues. You can stand up in front of people, you can talk about your thyroid problem or your diabetes, you can even talk about your cancer. And people will most often give you some sympathy. But God help you if you tell them about your mental illness. Most people will look askance and think that you're defective or something. And that's so sad, because mental health problems, as I discovered in my research, are as common as the common cold. And just think how different our world would be if we could talk openly and honestly about mental health issues. Hey, here's what worked for me. Perhaps that this will work for you as well. People wouldn't feel so much like the Lone Ranger anymore. In fact, what would be is they would feel empowered. They would feel like maybe they could take control of their life and change it for the better. Now, as many of you know, I've spent the past 30 years as a professional speaker, a workshop facilitator, and a personal coach. Against the advice of many early on, who told me that it was important that I create a larger-than-life persona for promotional purposes, I decided early on that I was going to take a different approach. I was going to stand in front of audiences and I was going to be real. I was going to show them Mark Swain, the real Mark Swain. I have shared my mental health struggles with audiences for years. I tell people that I know what it feels like, intimately, to feel like you're at the bottom of a black hole, that you will never smile again, let alone ever be happy. I know what that feels like. But then I share with them this news, good news, that you can heal. You can extricate yourself from that black hole. And you can live that happy life that you only imagined other people could live by changing your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. I know this to be true because I did it. And if I did it, others can do it as well, because I am no more special than any other person who has ever been on the face of this planet. It is important that I add one final point before I wrap up. Mental health, just like physical health, is a daily discipline. Just as we get up every day and we shower and we brush our teeth and do other things, we need to manage our mental state on a daily basis as well. We need to fill our lives with meaningful activities. We need to fill our minds with compelling and inspiring thoughts. And as we do these things, we will start feeling differently, and we will allow our spirits to soar. Friends, I hope that what I've said today may help someone out there. If it does, it was well worth my time to put myself out there openly to all of you. And the last thing that I want to say to you, from the bottom of my heart, life is good. It is very, very good.